This city is headed for a disaster of biblical proportions. What do you mean biblical? What he means is Old Testament, Mr. Mayor. Real wrath of God type stuff. Fire and brimstone coming down from the sky. Rivers and seas boiling. 40 years of darkness. Earthquakes, volcanoes. The dead rising from the grave. Human sacrifice. Dogs and cats living together. Mass hysteria. Enough. I got it. And what if you're wrong? If we're wrong, then nothing happens. We'll go to jail peacefully, quietly. We'll enjoy it. But if we're right, and we can stop this thing, Lenny, you will have saved the lives of millions of registered voters. Hey, I'm Liam, this is Rob, and welcome to the Hey Guys podcast, where we'll be covering one of the most important and undoubtedly prominent movies of our youth, 1984's seminal supernatural spectacular. I was always going to fuck it one bit, Ghostbusters. So, it's weird, this one. 1984, but it's like a prominent part of my youth. It was everywhere, despite the fact that it came out when I was like 2 years old. Crazy.
Can we just say, before we move on, that quote at the beginning, it wasn't just Liam and Rob then. I'm pretty sure I heard a bit of Pete Venkman, some Winston, some Roy Stantz. Mate,
the guy who plays the mayor.
You are a chameleon.
It's just a shame that every character's done in the exact same voice. But, whatever, man. I tried my best.
Oh, mate, honestly, it was fantastic and a great intro to possibly one of the best 80s films.
It's definitely, like I said, it's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
And without question, when I say most prominent, in that it played such a big part of my life, certainly like growing up. And I think a big part of that is because, sure, it was released in 1984, but we've talked before about how VHS and, how it became more and more prominent in our youth, gave all these like 80s movies a really long tail. And on top of that, 89, which is probably around the time I would have watched this, maybe just before, was Ghostbusters 2.
Yes.
And it's easy to forget just how massive the real Ghostbusters were. The cartoon was huge, and that started in 87.
Well, the cartoon has the honour of actually naming Slimer. Yeah,
it's never mentioned in the film. Well, no. The only thing that, and I wonder if because they definitely taken it from the film, because it's when they've got Slimer, after they've caught him, and he puts it in the containment chamber.
And they're talking to Winston, and Ray says, this captures the Slimers, the
ghosts, the spirits, and the Slimers. But and I assume they just went, he's a Slimer.
In production, aside from being called John Belushi, it was actually called Onion Head.
Yeah, which is pretty gross. I think that's even more gross than Slimer.
Yeah.
And who the fuck wants to be called Onion Head? I mean, imagine having that as a nickname, even if you are a ghost. And I've got to be honest, I don't get the whole ghosting in this. We'll get into that in a minute.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, to be clear, like, the end of the 80s, early 90s, Ghostbusters, you'd be led to believe now that it was a predominantly 80s thing because of, like, Stranger Things. And obviously they were dressed up and stuff. But even at the end of the 80s, early 90s, the show was still going strong. The sequel had come out, and the sequel's not great, but it was still popular.
Yeah. And
the toy line, which was based exclusively on the real Ghostbusters, the cartoon, was huge.
It was massive.
It wasn't like, we've mentioned it on previous episodes that a lot of these movies had 80s cartoons and a lot of them had toy lines. None of them had anything to match the popularity of the real Ghostbusters. Like, I actually saw a poster of it a few days ago. It's like this website, and they have posters, and it's of all the toys linked to, like, it was like all the early 90s, late 80s WWE figures, all the Transformers. And one of them was for the Ghostbusters figures. And not only was I shocked at how many there were, but second, I was like, fuck, I had tons of these. I had like really obscure, like fucking Egon in a spacesuit. And there's, all these like bizarro ghosts, which were obviously only on the cartoon. Everyone had Stay Puft Marshmallow, but there was like this whole host of kind of a rogues gallery built up over 7 series of the cartoon.
I think we're slipping into legacy a little bit here with the real Ghostbusters and everything. So
we are, but we always slip into it. I mean, I'll be talking facts in a minute. Jesus Christ!
Well, I already talked facts.
There's really any form to any of this.
I already talked facts.
Back to the film. Yeah. Back to the film. But as I said, the one thing going back and watching this film, and I didn't need to rewatch it again, is just how poorly the tone and vibe of this movie is being served by the sequels, by the cartoons. I know I'm slightly talking about legacy again, but you go back and watch this, and the biggest mistake they made with the remake, with the cartoons, everything, is thinking that Ghostbusters is a kid's film. it's not a kids' film at all.
Not at all. But for some reason, kids just gravitated towards this film. They loved it.
Yeah. I get that, like it's like the proton patch amazing, the car's cool, it's got all the iconography. But you go back and watch this film, it's got swearing, it's got tons of smoking, tons of smoke. Everyone's smoking all the goddamn time. It's as if the longer the movie goes on, the more prominent the smoking becomes. Like by the end of the film, they're just pretty much smoking for the entire film. And not only that, but how much sex there is, or certainly how much innuendo there is in this film.
My God, I'm so glad you brought it up. The first thing I wanted to say was I'm glad that all teenage boys must have been ghosts. Because when they go in the library and they're talking about how much of a mess and the sticky residue that's being left behind, all teenage boys must be ghosts.
Yeah, it's pretty dodgy stuff. But I mean, even the dialogue, especially stuff with Peter and Dana, I mean, I see it as one of the signs, like you have moments in your life where you're like, oh, all of a sudden I'm a grown-up. It's like something happens and you're like, oh, I've grown up a little bit. Like one of the things for me was like all of a sudden I liked having bits or pulp in my juice. I was like, oh, that feels very grown up. I stopped liking Adam Sandler films. I was like, oh, that feels quite grown up. And the other thing was like I'd watched Ghostbusters a million times when I was younger, but then one day I suddenly watched it. And I was like, where did all these sex jokes come from? It's God, like they are absolutely carpet bombed throughout the entire film. I mean, what is it? I mean, beyond the fact that Peter Venkman is, let's be clear, an absolute perv. Like, he is a dirty bastard.
Oh, he's 100% a horn dog. It's like when he asked Ray to come back in an hour and a half, like hinting what he was going to do to that grad student.
Oh, yeah, he was going to rattle her. And like, let's be clear, he's in his, 30s at this point. She's a student. She's pretty young. And his whole shtick is basically just trying to get laid. It was like, everybody loves Bill Murray and everybody loves Peter Venkman. And one of those things we've said is that he walks that line maybe better than anyone in terms of being a likable asshole. Like in most of his films, he's a douchebag. Groundhog Day, obviously Scrooged, this in particular, where you're like, this guy's like he's a skeptic, he's an asshole to all the guys, he's just constantly hitting on women. But I still think he gets away with it. But I watched the film with my wife and I said at the end, I was like, oh, did you still enjoy that? And she's like, yeah, but I hated Peter Venkman. I was like, hated? She's like, yeah. Not only is he a pervert, but she's on the side of the classic 80s Dean. She thinks he is a bad scientist. Because I was like, oh, look, it's the classic 80s Dean, give him shit. She's like, yeah, but he's right. He's a terrible scientist.
He's a terrible person. Making Ray get a third mortgage at 19% on the
he's not looking out for his friends at all, is he? But I mean, the only decent thing he does is basically turns down sex with possessed Dana. Like when she's possessed as the keymaster or the gatekeeper, whichever one she is.
She's the gatekeeper.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. So Lewis Tully's the gatekeeper.
The keymaster, obviously key in gate, isn't it? Key and lock.
Oh, key. Yeah, I really should have seen that. Yeah. So yeah, like she has that whole thing when she suddenly gets like super 80s sexy. I'm not sure where she gets that dress from. And she says, I want you inside me. And he's like, well, sounds like you've already got two people in there already. And it's like, that was one of those jokes when I was growing up. It just totally went over my head. But then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, that's good of him to turn down sex. I got to be honest, though, I thought he handled that situation pretty well. Like, the fact that she was floating and she was possessed. I mean, the moment when she's like, there is no Dana, only Zool. I'm like, I'd be fucking out. I'd be gone. Like, there's no sticking around at that point. But sorry, as usual, I've jumped basically to the end of the film. There.
Oh, mate, I was pretty much going, because you've already mentioned like how much sex or innuendo is in this film.
Tons.
Aside from Ray dreaming about being blown by a ghost.
Dressed as an admiral as well. Yeah. What the fuck? That's a weird ass dream, right? Yeah. I was like, why? Sorry, but it never clicked to me. I'd noticed the shoulder pads before, but for some reason, it's one of the magic things of this podcast is you're really paying attention maybe more than you usually would. I was like, wait a minute, is he getting a blowjob from a ghost dressed as an admiral? I was like, that's exactly what's fucking happening, and that is insane. It's insane.
And there's no context to it. It's just him dreaming.
No.
And then jump into the end. The allegory of four men shaking whilst holding their wands and shooting towards a woman, and then everybody getting covered in white sticky stuff.
Yes, it's not very subtle, is it?
No,
it's not very subtle,
except for
Peter. Yeah, which is a great visual gag. Everyone is literally, they could not be more covered. They're like, "Are you okay? You okay?" And they go to Peter, he's got like a little blob on his head, and that's it. He's like, "I'm fine." He's like, "That's it."
I just imagine the script saying everyone just ends up looking like they've been in a bukkake party because it is. Oh my god, it is. Yeah, like
he gets it.
But watching it as a kid, you don't get these allegories for sex. And you should, because
visual hints.
But it's not a kids' film. That's where we're getting at. It's not a kids' film.
It's not. Like, even I had never noticed it before, and even this time, it was my wife who pointed it out. Like, when the gatekeeper and the keymaster, and as I said, I never really put the names together until you just mentioned it. When they go up onto the roof, the camera kind of cuts back to them, and they're getting up off that plinth.
Yeah.
And my wife's just like, "Wait, were they just having sex?" And I'm like, "I think they were." And I've never noticed it before. They had to have sex to turn into dogs.
Look at Lewis's face when he gets up. That is clearly a man who's just got laid by Ripley.
Yeah, well, that is all pretty weird, because he definitely drew the short straw, because when she gets possessed by the dog, or the keymaster becomes Zool or whatever nonsense, she becomes super hyper 80s sex bomb. Like, she's got the blusher, the hair, the dress, she looks the business. Oh my god, she's like, hot possessed chick. And then you get Lewis, who just becomes a fucking even dumber and starts talking to dogs. And whose only thing is like, "All right, dude, we're going to need you to deliver a lot of exposition because the plot doesn't really make sense. So if you could just do that while you're possessed, that'd be great." Talking to a horse, of course.
Can we talk about the script, right? Where they wrote down the names of the characters and they went, "Right, we need to get Gozer the Gozerian, Gozer the Destroyer. But how do we get Gozer here? Okay, Gozer needs to come here by being... The door needs to be unlocked by the keymaster and the gatekeeper. Keymaster, super sexy woman, Zool. Zool, what a name. We're going to get a little geek then. We're going to get the... he's the keymaster. We're going to get the little keymaster going. What can we name him? Vince Clotho.
Yeah, what is up with that name? Zool and Vince Clotho. Vince Clotho sounds like a MotoGP driver from Greece. It's a bizarro name. And like you said, it never really... It's so bizarre. Like I've seen this film so many times, and it's like, why did that never hold any? I was like, wait, Vince Clotho? What kind of fucking name? Like, don't get me wrong, Zool is a weird name, but it fits with Zool and Gozer and Gozer, and all that. And then you just got this fucking guy. Yeah, he drew the short straw across the board.
Can we also bring up the fact that you had to have stones turn into ghost dogs, take over people, to have sex, to become ghost dogs again?
Yeah, it doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah,
I would argue that while the plot just about holds together, it's so inconsequential. It's just about getting you places and seeing things. Like you said before, you have these exposition dumps about Gozer, and they rattle off all these. They're clearly aware that none of it makes sense and that nobody's paying attention. So they just rattle off as quick as they can, like, get out the door. And even the stuff, like, I guess the other bad guy, whatever you want to call him, is Walter Peck. He just shows up like halfway through.
Yeah.
There's no reason for him to be so upset.
Why does he need to be there?
I don't know, other than just to be the ultimate. And don't get me wrong, he is a fantastic asshole, which certainly is a weird thing to say. But he's great at being a douchebag.
In 3 scenes, he drips asshole. Like,
that makes me feel better about an amazing asshole rather than
sticking with
drips asshole.
Oh my god, he is just so smarmy, just so sleazy. He does it so well.
Mm-hmm. Well, if any character deserves to be described as dripping with asshole, it's this fucking guy, Walter Peck. And yeah, he is. Don't get me wrong, he's brilliant at what he does in this film. He's completely unlikable. You totally on the side with Ghostbusters, all that jazz. But it's like he just appears as if from nowhere. There's no justification for his character. He just shows up. He's like, "I'm an asshole. I'm with environmental control. Maybe, I don't know. I'm going to get the police. We're going to shut this down." And then you're going to have the big 80s music montage with all the ghosts escaping, which is fantastic.
And he is literally there, you're right, just to push that forward. Because they need to shut down the containment unit to cause...
all the ghosts,
whatever is happening, all the ghosts to come back, So, but was there ever a storyline where that, like, all the ghosts were just there anyway. Do you know what I mean? Like, why did they need that to happen for everyone to go, "Oh, Gozer's up on the roof by there"? Like, Gozer
I think it was just
like
it was a trigger point. I think it was just, and again, I think a lot of it, as I mentioned previously, is just an excuse to have something cool. Like you say, plot-wise, do you really need it? No. I mean, even the stuff with the building and the ghost stuff, it's explained in like a very brief prison scene, which doesn't really, like, it's just like, all right, we've got to describe some of this plot. It's like, well, do it while they're in prison. It's like, why would they have all their maps and stuff in prison? Don't worry about it. Just get the goddamn plot out their mouths and get them to the building, and we can have the big finale.
I wrote that down.
It works.
I wrote that down. How the hell did they keister all those maps into the prison? But
I don't know. I mean, if you were hiding that somewhere, prison style, geez, that was a big ass map, man. It was a big ass map.
Speaking of the prison scene, we've already mentioned Walter Peck, who was played by William Atherton, who is obviously in Die Hard. I forget his name in Die Hard.
He was an asshole. He was dripping with asshole.
Yeah,
as well.
But did you notice the other Die Hard reference? I say the Die Hard reference because this was filmed before Die Hard. Al Powell was the prison guard, Sergeant Powell.
Oh, was he really?
Ghostbusters. The mayor wants to see you. That's literally it.
Yeah. I didn't notice that at all. That's the bit of the film where Ashley's. But I mean, we're getting towards the end. We should kind of walk it back at least a little bit. We don't need to run through the entire.
We fell down a rabbit hole. There's a lot to cover at the beginning.
There is a lot, but one of the things, and again, is as soon as this movie starts, it sets out its tone brilliantly, and it's, as I said, it's something which has been lost with everything since, with the sequel, with the remake, with the cartoons, everything. And I hope they bring it back for Ghostbusters Afterlife. Is the fact that this is actually, they go for scares in this. Like, it's like, it's a comedy, but it's not an all-out comedy, this film, at all. No. Like if we look at the Ghostbusters reboot as a comparison, the reason I hated that film, and I do hate it, wasn't everyone got caught up about the fact that there were girls who were going to be the Ghostbusters. That's not an issue. And the actual cast is fine in that film.
Yeah.
But it completely missed the point. As soon as you had that opening sequence, which was kind of trying to mirror the start of the original Ghostbusters film, when they go into the basement, was that it was everything is played for laughs. And when they walked outside, every single character is a comedian. Every single character in that film is trying to get jokes. The stuff with Chris Hemsworth is so out of place. I know a lot of people loved him in that film. He drove me up the fucking wall. And it's not his fault. It was the script and how it was written. But if you go back and watch Ghostbusters, there are some laughs. But I would say the only broadly comedic character is actually Louis Tully. Everyone else is playing it relatively straight. It's like, sure, like Ray is over exuberant and Egon is overly pedantic. And the closest thing you got to a comedic character is Peter, but he's not playing it for like yucks and big laughs. He's just the sarcastic asshole of the group.
Peter is like, just sarcasm. He's dripping with sarcasm.
He's dripping with sarcasm. But that is the thing. You go back and watch the original Ghostbusters, it's not a comedy in that way. And they lost their way even in time for the second one when it was going more broadly comedic. The reason this film works is because it's like, it's got comedy in it, but it is going for, as I say, traditional scares. Like that opening sequence with the librarian. Man, that librarian's fucking scary.
Yeah. So Egon, Peter, and Ray are college professors. And of the paranormal arts, I guess, or the paranormal science.
Some nonsense,
something like that. And they're kicked out just as they discover that ghosts actually exist.
Yeah.
So
it's a bit of a coincidence.
We've seen one ghost. We know how to catch them, so we're going to become Ghostbusters. Like, it goes straight from... Like, that is one of the quickest... I guess just the quickest things to run in. Yeah, quickest transitions. Thank you. Couldn't think of the word then. To go from, okay, we've seen a ghost. We know how to catch them. Right, we're in business.
Well, that's how they become famous, though. Like, they are in on the ground floor. And let's be clear, Peter, he's not putting any money into this. It's all Ray's money. He's just like, and remember as well, when he's making this decision to go into business for themselves, they're drinking. They are getting drunk outside. He's like, fuck it, let's just go into business. Ray's going to put up all the money. We'll just give it a go. If it doesn't work out, well, it's Ray's mortgage, not mine. And Ray's just going for it because he's just so positive. He just wants to be involved.
And
it's just like, they just go for it. And Yeah, does it make sense? Maybe, perhaps not, but they're like, well, we think something's I mean, they do kind of nod to it a few times. Like Egon says, listen, I think something big is coming. Like we've seen this ghost and they've got the readings. And again, all these things kind of just happen vaguely in the background. There's a line here or there to just about justify it. But for the most part, it's like you said, it's like, listen, let's get these guys into the fire station as quickly as possible. Let's get them kitted out. Let's get the fucking car and let's get them out the door.
The fire station as well. You don't get more of a hint of Ray's positivity and his exuberism than the fire station. When Peter and Egon are trying to get a better deal and they're going, this is a hazard, you know, there's metal work just falling apart, and then he slides down the fire pole and goes, this is great, we should sleep here, I'm gonna get my stuff, we're gonna
he's just a big kid, isn't he?
All Peter is just turn around and go, I guess we'll take it.
Although that is one thing that the reboot did really well. I'm not sure if you remember, but in the reboot, they actually go to what looks like the same fire station, and then they get told what the price is. And like, whoa, we can't afford this. And it would be exactly this. I know it's like 84, but that fire station is in Tribeca. Like that's a hipster part of Lower West Manhattan. A building of that size, even if it is a unique fixer-upper, do you know how much that building would cost?
It would
be ridiculous.
It makes you think what the mortgage or the third mortgage on his house was. Do you know what kind of house he's got in New York?
That's the problem with me now. It's just like when you're growing up, you start thinking about stuff like house prices. It's like the flat that Dana Barrett's got. I'm like, what is her role in this orchestra and how much is she getting paid? Because she has an apartment on the Upper East Side overlooking Central Park. I mean, you're talking millions.
Yeah,
excuse me. You're talking absolutely millions to live.
She's obviously getting all of her furniture from Goodwill.
Yeah, that is the thing. Her furniture doesn't match the surroundings. You know, you just think, God, if you're living in that apartment in that location, you're like, God, man, get some goddamn decent.
Are you really getting a pink 3-piece suite?
I know it's pretty dodgy, but this is one of those films as well. Like this was my introduction to New York on screen. And this is why I fell in love with New York and always wanted to go to New York. I mean, you know, the thing is, it is gritty as like New York used to be, but it definitely plays up the kind of funner side of the city as well. The energy, it's like, it's not the same as like Mean Streets or Serpico or like fucking Midnight Cowboy or something like that, where it's like that pure 70s grit. When you saw New York on screen, it'd be like, man, I don't fucking fancy that at all.
For me, it's Taxi Driver. You think of New York gritty.
Yeah. Or God. Depressing. When I think of New York depressing, I do think of Midnight Cowboy. That is a fucking rough film. But that film, like, you see the kind of grittier side of the city, but I think even though it doesn't play a huge role all the way through it gets the energy of the city quite well. Yeah. And it's one of the few things, like I'm not one of these people who goes to locations like, I've got to see the stuff in the movies and all that stuff. But when I went to New York, you know, you think of all the movies that had been filmed in New York, and all I was interested in seeing was the fire station in Tribeca, and I wanted to see the building on the Upper East Side. I was like, I've got to take pictures of those. And I'm not gonna lie, I went to see the hotel from Home Alone 2 because I'm a fucking dog. But that was more by accident.
That was a touching moment, wasn't it? When Egon, why can't I remember his real name? Harold Ramis.
Ramis.
Yeah, Ramis. When he passed away, people went to the firehouse in Tribeca, and they left Nutter Butter or Nestle Crunch, and Twinkies outside.
Twinkies, yeah. Well, that was, I mean, we mentioned it before about like sweets on screen. And the first one for me was absolutely the Twinkie. I love its use throughout the film. The fact that it's used as a kind of like a measurement system almost. It's like, oh, imagine if there was like a bajillion fucking Twinkies and all this nonsense. But it was like, I didn't know what a Twinkie was. There was no way to check this out. I just saw this weird thing. I was just like, what the hell is that? A Twinkie? I've never even heard of a Twinkie. So for the longest time, I wanted to try a Twinkie, and there was no way to have one unless you went to America. So eventually, of course, I went to America. I got to try a Twinkie, and they're totally bang average. I think I mentioned on previous episodes, they taste like Swiss rolls, and that's it, sadly.
That was Nestle Crunch for me and Die Hard.
Oh, yeah. They're not bad. As far as American chocolate, generally speaking, it tastes like ass. But Nestle Crunch isn't too bad. Yeah, more like the most disappointing chocolate in the world has to be Hershey's, because you bite into Hershey's and you think it's like, oh, this is okay, and then this wave of aftertaste comes through and it tastes like foot. It's horrible, man.
Way to alienate our 7 American listeners.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, they'll know. They'll know. They must have had dairy milk. Like, I love American food. I love American baked goods. I love man. I can eat donuts all fucking day. The one thing they can't seem to do or can't seem to get quite right is chocolate. Like American chocolate is nearly always shit.
Don't Hershey's actually own Cadbury's? We're going into a different
podcast. Yeah. Forget about it. I think they do, but that's besides the point. That's not.
You mentioned Dana's apartment. Good name. You've mentioned Dana's apartment. There's two things I want to bring up. The first introduction with Dana going into apartment. The first thing is that I would love to have seen the Ghostbusters actually do some tests on Lewis before he became the Keymaster. Yeah. Because that guy has some weird ESP radar, or he must just be living by his front door.
Yeah, he does seem to have a sensor. I would like to have seen Peter go in with the weird squeaky stick thing, which I'm still not quite sure what it was doing. I think Peter maybe just picked that up off the floor and was like, well, let's try and look professional. I'll just take this round and squeezed it and pointed at Dana. I mean, again, it's quite phallic, I suppose. I don't know. It's all very odd. Yeah. Basically, he just goes there again to hit on it. That's it.
But Lewis, and it's just so fast talking. But the second thing I wanted to mention in the first introduction to Dana's apartment, aside from the three-piece suite, I've watched this film probably about 15 times, maybe more. I can't tell you the actual number. But enough that I should have noticed the actual Stay Puft Marshmallow packet next to it.
There's two nods. There's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man in the kitchen, and there's one on the side of the building as well. Yeah.
And I never caught either of them.
Or me.
Until this viewing. Like, to me, the Stay Puft Marshmallow guy, well, growing up, to me, he was just a Michelin Man with a sailor's hat. But the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was just something that they talked about, but there was no actual hints to him during the film. They are actually buying these. And what kind of single woman is buying a pack of marshmallows that size, by the way?
Yeah, it's weird because, again, coming back to American food, like you have the American food aisle in the supermarket, and I see these big bags of marshmallows, and they're not Stay Puft ones. I think you can buy Stay Puft ones, but they're just large marshmallows, same thing. And I always want to buy them, but then I pick them up. I'm like, what the fuck am I going to do with these? And like you said, to your point, what the hell was she doing with them?
Yeah.
Like, unless she's making s'mores, herself, like, was she going camping on her own? I'm like, I don't know what you have with them. It's a bit of you wouldn't just fucking sit in the living room and eat giant marshmallows. I mean, that would be pretty insane, but maybe that's a bag. Yeah. Who knows?
As she arrives, Lewis comes out of the door to tell her about the TV. And he says probably one of the weirdest neighborly things I've ever heard, which was, I climbed on the ledge to disconnect the cable.
Yeah.
That's a totally normal neighborly thing to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
People complaining about your TV being loud. So I climbed. We're on the 22nd floor, by the way.
He's pretty eager to impress. Yeah, really he's a pretty odd character because I would say he's the only overtly, broadly comedic character. Everyone else you can almost imagine existing in the real world, whereas he pushes over into he's just a comic character. Everything is played for laughs with him. He's so ridiculous.
Walker. He's just, but he levitates. He levitates this film, I think.
I think you need it.
So well in it. With what he's given, it's great.
Do you need the bit with the party? I'm not sure if you do, but I love the fact that he's this absolutely 100% committed accountant, and he's got he's just talking shit to everyone. He doesn't realize what he's saying. It's I want to save money, so I invite clients instead of friends, and he's saying that to the people there, and it's this really bizarro collection of people, and it's got one of my favorite random selection of characters. I don't know why they stick with me, but there's a bit when they show up to the party. It's everybody, this is Ted and Annette Fleming. Ted owns a small carpet cleaning business in receivership, and Annette is drawing a salary from a deferred bonus from 2 years ago. They have $15,000 left on their house at 8%, so they're okay. And that's it. This weird thing with Ted and Annette Fleming, but for some odd reason, the names and those characters stick in my head. And I was like, is there going to be anything else on these guys, online? And I actually found, I'm not sure if this is canon or whether somebody's made this up. It was actually on IGN. But I'm going to read this, so bear with me here. So Ted and Annette Fleming, a seemingly ordinary Manhattan middle-class couple, or a modern-day Bonnie and Clyde, in the years since their introduction to a room full of associates at the home of accountant Louis Tully, Ted and Annette Fleming lived, by all accounts, an average life of the American dream. Friends and neighbors would describe them as two of the nicest people you could ever meet. When Ted Fleming was pulled over for a routine traffic violation in December of '98, a half vial of crack cocaine was found carefully hidden in his glove compartment. A further search of the vehicle revealed an ominous-looking trash bag concealed in the trunk. The contents of the bag, 34 bloody severed limbs. Upon his arrest, Annette Fleming was immediately sought for questioning. She found 13 days later at a train station in El Paso, Texas, with a briefcase containing $75,000 in cash and a duffel bag full of what medical examiners would later prove to be partially consumed human flesh. A search of Ted's carpet cleaning business revealed a detailed client roster which, when cross-referenced with statewide missing persons records, revealed the identities of 28 potential victims. Ironically, a hidden panel beneath the officer's white shag carpeting soon led investigators to a secret chamber described by one officer as the most horrible thing that a man can imagine. 3 of the 4 officers went down into the room that afternoon, retired from the force within 6 months, citing severe psychological issues. Ted and Annette Fleming are currently awaiting death by lethal injection, pending appeal. So that's the story of Ted and Annette. For those who were wondering what happened to that apparently adorable couple, pretty dark future for those guys.
That whole tirade that you just read there was fantastic. Totally blows out of the water what I was going to read, which was his opening line in the party about the Tylenol thing, which was absolutely fantastic. I don't know if I want to read it now, following Ted and Annette Fleming's mass murder.
No, you've got to read the Tylenol thing now, dude. You've got to go for it.
It's just when she said, do you have any Excedrin or extra strength Tylenol? And he goes, gee, I think all I got is acetylsalicylic acid, generic. See, I can get 600 tablets of that for the same price as 300 of a name brand. That makes good financial sense. Good advice. Hey, this is real smoked salmon from Nova Scotia, Canada. $24.95 a pound. It only cost me $14.12 after tax, though. Like, what's
do you know what's weird though? The weirdest thing about that,
nobody's listening to him at this point.
We rarely, other than at the top of the show, and we have like a stupid quote thing which we do. We rarely write down quotes from characters and then read them back on. This wasn't prepared, us doing this. We both randomly picked quotes from Louis Tully at the same party. There's just something about that bizarro scene where it all just seems to stand out. And like you say, Rick Moranis doesn't have a huge amount to work with it, but he absolutely owns it.
That whole scene, from the moment he goes back into the party and like the whole Tylenol thing, up to Ted and Annette Fleming, he shuts the door, and he goes, okay, who brought the dog? That whole thing is just teeming with just stuff that quotable stuff. He does.
What it feels like to me is, and obviously it kind of plays part of who was in this film, who was supposed to be in this film, is that it feels like a Saturday Night Live clip.
Yeah,
that's what it feels like in the middle of the film.
And it totally makes sense. Who wasn't in this film?
Yeah, considering you know, most of the people either in it or the people who were potentially going to be in it, they were all Saturday Night Live guys. So it makes sense that you would have this random, and people, when you think of this film, obviously it was directed by Ivan Reitman, but it was written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis. Yeah. But Louis Tully, Rick Moranis, actually has an uncredited writing role in this film. So I'm not sure if he's just decided, it's like, listen, I'm going to give myself a bigger part. Because this role was actually supposed to go originally to John Candy.
Yeah.
But John Candy
wanted to go weird with this.
Yeah, really weird. Like, well, one, he wanted it to be a bigger part, and then 2, he wanted to do it with a broad German accent, which is just, all right, fair enough. Well,
and randomly have 2 dash hounds just running around as well.
Of course. I mean, he really wants to go. And don't get me wrong, Rick Moranis does go for it. Like with the velour suit, the kind of like the facial, like he is all in on this. He's got it turned up to 10. Like he doesn't care about the fact that the rest of the cast is playing it relatively straight. Like his scenes with Dana, like Sigourney Weaver's playing it pretty straight, and he's ugly hitting on it. He's clearly trying to get after it, but it's just these weird, uncomfortable scenes. But you need, if it was just another normal guy also hitting on Dana, it'd be too much, because you've got the whole film with Peter hitting on her. But when Lewis does, it feels completely separate from that, because he's such an oddball. Such an oddball. But Dana White, everybody wants a piece of Dana White. There's those 2. There's the other musician guy who's clearly keen.
Do you know what
No?
It took me ages to realise, and obviously the first time you watch this, you wouldn't know because it's after the fact. But he's the bad guy, Ellis, in Beverly Hills Cop 3.
I watched 15 minutes of Beverly Hills Cop 3 before I turned it off.
I'm not saying it's fantastic. I'm not saying it's going to be.
I'm going to say
never need to mention it again.
He's in it though.
He is the bad guy in it. Yeah, he is the one who he's the head of security.
I can feel it. I can feel it building up in me. This isn't your fault, but it's like just the mention of Beverly Hills Cop 3, and I'm like, I just want to fucking punch someone. That film is
Beth, run away.
So run away, Beth. Yeah. Just keep my wife away from me. You're getting it. It's like, but then I feel like if I went to court and my wife's sitting there with a black eye, and they're like, well, "What's your answer for this?" Like, "Oh, I just really hate Beverly Hills Cop 3," and the judge would look at me and goes, "It is a piece of shit, mine. All right, we're going to throw this case." I feel like I get away with it, but I'm not going to roll the dice anyway.
No.
I'm not going to roll the dice like I might hit. I'm not going to hit my wife, just to be clear.
I know. This is now on bloody, I was going to say film. This is not recorded, yeah. No.
One thing I just want to mention. Yeah. Oh, sorry to butt in there.
I was just going to say, Liam doesn't hit his wife, but yeah.
No, definitely not. Sorry, I should have let you clear that up. One of the weird things, like, watching this film again is, all right, so the first part of the film is them becoming the Ghostbusters. And then once you get the musical montage, it's, after the Janine thing, who has that great moment. Where is it? Jesus Christ. Like, she's so New York, and it's like she's on the phone. It's like, nothing's going on. It's like, you do? You have? Yeah. We got one! It's like they got the fucking buzzer and stuff, the totally unnecessary buzzer, because they're all just there.
Ghostbusters,
it's an awesome scene.
What you want.
Like, she's, again, another great character with not much to do, but like, and even that like weird budding romance with Egon in the background, it's just quite charming. But the weirdest thing in the build-up to that is that the Ghostbusters are obviously becoming like super famous. You have that great montage, and they're all, it's the 80s is awash with montage. Obviously, fewer as successful as kind of telling you a huge amount of story as that does. Like, them just going through all these cool little cases. There's all these great visual moments, and it's just them becoming famous. So you've got this group of now famous. They're on front of magazines, talk shows, everything. Yeah. And they're hiring for the 4th Ghostbuster. So do you want to become a Ghostbuster and become famous? And there's only one guy applying for the job? Are you out of your fucking mind? Imagine if you put that in the paper now. Do you want to become a Ghostbuster and become famous? Yeah, half the world applies for that job. Instead, Winston rocks up. He's like, I want a job. I just want a decent paycheck. I've got no qualifications. And they're like, yeah, you've got the job. That's it. Yeah, we need a black guy, supposedly, or something. I don't know.
It's everything she says to him, isn't it? And I never wrote it down, but she says, do you believe in this? Have you ever done this? And he said, look, as long as there's a steady paycheck in it, I'll believe in anything you want me to believe in.
Well, maybe that's where they hide him. It's like, listen, this guy's no nonsense. This is a guy who he's just going to get on with things. He's not going to come in with a lot of baggage. He's just here to get a paycheck. And it totally works. Although I do find it a little bit harsh, because obviously when you think of the Ghostbusters, you think of all 4 of them. Yeah. And I know he doesn't come in until maybe halfway through the film. But if you go back, like the posters, Winston's not on the posters, man.
No.
It's harsh. I'm like, I know he wasn't the big star. The whole thing was that he was supposed to be Eddie Murphy and he was supposed to have a bigger part and all that jazz. But, still, man, he's one of the core 4. Yeah. You've got to get him on the poster.
Well, if you ever think of the Ghostbusters, you think of all 4 of them. But if you watch this film, they did him dirty. Like, when he read... Because he said there's a Netflix special, The Movies That Made Us, or the movie...
Yeah, I know one, yeah.
And it was said in that when he was given the script, Eddie Murphy was given.
Yeah.
And he had a much bigger part. And then when Eddie Murphy turned it down, because Eddie Murphy was actually the one who was meant to get slimed. Yeah,
in the hotel, in the film.
And so, I say Winston, Ernie Hudson is reading this, and he's like, "Oh man, this is gonna make me. This is like I'm working with these comedians. It's gonna be great." He shows up at the set, and they're like, "Oh no, you're no longer on page 1. You're on page 76."
Yeah, he is late in the film. Like like you said, the whole sequence, like they them go into the hotel, the Slimer fight, which is amazing. Like, he's not in that. The whole montage before it, where they get famous, he's not in any of that, and then he just shows up at the end.
And if you think about it, like a lot of it, even the script just did. I mean, aside from the fact that he shows up, they offer him the job, they tell him about the containment unit. Then the next thing you see, he's talking about the Twinkie. Then he's in the car with
Tell
Ray.
him about the Twinkie.
Then he's in the car with Ray talking about Judgment Day.
Quite an odd scene. An odd scene, that one, yeah.
Then he's in prison, and then it's the end battle. But even at the end battle, when they go, nice working with you, Dr. Venkman. Nice working with you, Ray. Egon. Yeah, you over there as well, number 4. Just turn your thing on.
Just keep your mouth shut.
Yeah,
he has like a handful of cool lines. Like, I love the scene with the mayor, where it's like, Mr. Mayor, I've only been working with these guys for a couple of weeks, but I can tell you this stuff is real. I have seen shit that would turn you white. I always thought that was great.
I wrote that down. And it was the other thing in the jail when he turned around and went, I'm going to get a separate lawyer.
Yeah. Although, I got to be honest, I hate his line at the end of the film. Like, the weird
that was
King of the World scene.
They must have been watching this film and thinking the same thing we thought. Like, oh, they're doing Ray dirty, so we'll give him the last line of the film. Before the credits.
Well, it's weird because it's like you obviously have the big kiss moment, and it's leading straight into that amazing credit sequence where it's just basically them leaving the job. It's a great sequence, and it's so clever to have it in the credits because you don't need any dialogue, and it's them literally just taking off their gear, putting it in the car, loading up, and driving off when everyone cheers. But they're like, oh, we can't go from a kiss to that, so they go to Winston. I love this town. And he claps his hands. Yeah. And I was just like, oh, that line just doesn't work. It feels out of place. I can see why they've added it in there, but I'm not a fan of that line. But then, like you said, I don't want to begrudge Ernie Hudson one of his few lines in the film.
Did you notice the best cameo in this film? Behind the police barricade, as they're driving up to Dana's apartment. Mm-hmm. Ron Jeremy.
Is he really there?
Yeah, Ron Jeremy.
Awesome.
Is stood behind the barricade, just staring up at the thing.
So where is bizarre. Of all the people to be there. No. And that is the point when the film really changes gear, because it's relatively low key. And then all of a sudden it's like you say, the bit where you've got to have Walter Peck, who's there, goes down, and there's the great containment field, like when they close it down, and it has the I Believe It's Magic song, which is so 80s with like the light show and everything. And then it's like, they get arrested, and it's to the mayor's office. And from that point on, it becomes a massive event movie, but only at that point. Like, up until then, it's so low key. But then all of a sudden, they're getting led to Dana's apartment. Like, there's the police, there's the army there. Yeah. They get an armed escort, the crowds are there, the music kicks in, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is this big, huge movie. And they get the gear on, they stand outside the building, they have the big hero shot, and then they walk inside, and they have to walk upstairs for like 2 hours. Yeah. It's such a great moment. Like, this big hero moment followed by, oh, fuck, we could have got the stairs?
Only that street, only that street, or roadblock, whatever you call them in New York, are going nuts, and they're barricaded, and they're all loving it. Because when the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man shows up and he starts, everyone else is acting like nothing's happening. As he steps on cars, like, oh, yeah, nothing's happening over there. We're just going to carry on with our lives. Like,
well, there's a few weird bits with that whole scene. Like, I'm not sure if you're just supposed to buy it because there's like a cloud over it because of like Gozer and shit. Right. But it's like when they're on the ground, it's daylight. When they go up to the top, it's nighttime. Yeah. And when they come back down, it's daytime again. It's pretty strange. It's pretty odd. But, it doesn't really matter. Like, you can just pass it off as it's ghost cloud, I suppose.
But it was the same with editing with, going back to Winston, there was a scene where they're talking to him about, I think they've introduced him, and then they move on, and he's in his Ghostbusters getup, covered in slime, and then they're talking about the Twinkie, and he's wearing the same getup that he did when he first met them. It's a bit of shoddy editing. Well, I think they filmed it pretty quickly, this film as well. I think it had an okay budget. I think it was like $30 million. But I think there was a pretty short period for them shooting this. So, I don't think there's, I think they made changes along the way. Like, originally they thought they weren't going to be able to call it Ghostbusters because of licensing issues. Yeah, it was Ghost Smasher. Hunters?
Ghost Hunters, Ghost Smasher. Yeah. And there were certain shots earlier in the film when they actually film it twice. Once with a sign saying Ghostbusters, once with a sign saying like Ghost Hunt or Ghost Smashers, whatever it is, because they're like, at that point they didn't even know what the hell it was going to be. And there's actually a nod as well to one of the. I'm not sure if it's on purpose, but when Ray buys the car Ecto 1, which is an amazing movie car, by the way, it actually comes in black, And supposedly it was going to be black originally. That was the plan, until they realized they're shooting all these scenes at night. And like, we can't have a black car at night, man. It's not going to work. And it's like, thank God they painted it white, because talk about like, it doesn't need, I still don't know why it has all those lights, all those bits on the roof, but it just looks great. I mean, that's up there with like the DeLorean, the 89 Batmobile as one of the great movie cars. What is with the 80s having all the best movie cars? It's bizarre.
Can we talk? So they were doing the Ghostbusters, and they were doing it twice for the Ghostbusters, Ghost Smashers, Ghost Hunters, whatever it was. Then they decided this is taking too much time, so we'll just do it as Ghostbusters, hoping we can get the name from.
Yeah.
So it was an original cartoon by Filmation.
Yeah, I've seen the original cartoon.
Yeah, and it was. They were in this like 1920s roadster car that seemed to fly or travel, being driven by a monkey in a fedora.
Yeah.
Gorilla in a fedora.
I remember it well.
A weird purple-skinned woman with the headphones. I mean, I do remember this, but I'm looking at
I bought the VHS when I was younger, and I think it was largely off the fact that it was just called Ghostbusters. It's like, you know, now when you go into like, especially in supermarkets, when there's like a big film coming out, there'll always be a low budget straight to DVD equivalent where they'll almost call it the same thing.
The
and
Asylum.
I look at it and I'm like, who the fuck buys these? And then I think back to when I was younger. I'm like, oh yeah, me. It used to be fucking me.
The Asylum these days are notorious for it. They call them mockbusters. So you had Transformers, they had Transmorphers.
Yeah.
Battle Los Angeles, they had Battle of LA.
Oh, fantastic.
So they didn't even try.
Who the hell wanted to make a rip-off of Battle Los Angeles? I don't even know which the fake one is. They're both terrible.
You had Pacific Rim, Atlantic Rim.
Oh, fantastic.
Like, honestly.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, the thing is with this is obviously slightly different because the cartoon was there first.
Yeah.
But I'm sure I bought it because it was called Ghostbusters. And we never really questioned. It's like, why is there a monkey in this? And the thing, and why has he got a hat and he's driving the car? I don't know. I watched that so many times when I was younger just because we had it on VHS. And it's just like,
suspenders as well.
I think he did. Yeah. I have not seen it for a long time. I could just see his face in the hat. But it was a weird ass thing. But anyway, I'm glad they end up with Ghostbusters. I mean, again, it kind of plays into the fact that so much of this film was iconic. It was, you know, the car was iconic. Yeah. The symbol was iconic. The soundtrack's iconic. The suits are iconic. The proton packs are iconic. Marshmallow Man is iconic. So I tell you what's not iconic? The main bad guy, Gozer the Gozerian. Not iconic at all. Just a super 80s weirdo. Like, I don't get Gozer the Gozerian. Like, I mean, we mentioned it briefly earlier, but the explanation of why Gozer the Gozerian is showing up, why the key mask, like, it's delivered in 2 or 3 exposition dumps. Nobody seems to care. I think everyone is vaguely aware that Gozer the Gozerian herself is pretty rubbish. Like, listen, we just want to get the giant Stay Puft Marshmallow on screen. And it's like, I appreciate maybe the same amount of effort didn't go into it, but why it had to be so aggressively 80s. Like, for the most part, I think this film holds up. But the whole sequence with her and a weird 80s like glass palace in an alternate dimension, I'm not sure that all looks that great. Like, she's got like the high top and the glitter and everything. It's a rough look, man.
Doing well in heels, mind. And
yeah, although she does have that one great line. Are you a god? And he just turns around to Peter and Peter's like, yep. And he's like, nope, then die. If anybody asks if you're a god, you say yes.
Not even voiced by her mind, was it? It was voiced by somebody else.
Yeah, I know this. I know this is the sequel, but when I was doing research for this, it blew my fucking mind that Vigo the Carpathian is voiced by Max von Sydow. Yeah. I had no fucking idea. I just thought it was the actor. Max von Sydow's Vigo the Carpathian. How crazy is that?
It seemed to be some sort of trend that they were doing for both films with the bad guy. They were like. Well, she was a supermodel from Germany or something. So her English
she totally looked. Yeah. I like. She looked like 80s Europop to me. That's what she looked like to me.
You said the hair, mind. That led to another great line in this film when they're shooting the proton.
Aim for the flat top.
Aim for the flat top.
yeah. At least they're self-aware. But you know, you get through that bit. It's a little bit ropey, whatever. But the payoff. The Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, the whole thing with Ray. It's like, I tried, you know, and he just briefly loses his fucking mind. I think Ray's gone bye-bye. The bit where the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man walks around the corner, I'm not sure if it's on like I don't know, 5th and 24th, whatever crazy ass street it is coming up in New York. They all look the same. It's just one of the big fucking roads down there. It just looks amazing. Like it still holds up so well.
That's what I wanted to say. That the proton packs when they're shooting the streams, Slimer, most of the ghosts, the practical effects like the ghost cabbie.
Yeah, it looks great.
The dogs, they all look fantastic. The only thing that has dated so bad is the dogs, the demon dogs running.
Yeah, the demon dogs running. There's the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man's face when they're shooting, when they're doing the cross the streams.
Yeah.
Which of course you don't cross the streams. Full protonic reversal and all that jazz.
Unless you want to get covered in white sticky substances.
Of course. When they're doing that, you see Stay Puft Marshmallow Man kind of comes over the crest of the building because he's climbing up like King Kong. And you see his face, and it has this suddenly very stop motion-y kind of look about it. And he suddenly has this like, uh-oh face kind of thing. And it looks a little bit ropey, but those are small issues with the film that was made, 37 years ago?
I didn't think it was that bad, but what took me out of the film a little bit was those dogs running and chasing you. Like, that looked like that was cell animation by the looks of it. Do you know what I mean?
I wasn't sure if it's cell animation or no, it wasn't. It was more cell animation, I suppose. But yeah, for the most part, and one of the great things again is like watching these films, like, you have little moments, like you say, with the running dogs, but for the most part, I'm watching them like, how did they even do this? Like, bizarrely, like even at the start of the film, when the librarian's walking through and then all of a sudden all the cards come flipping up, I was like, it's such a simple effect, but I was like, how did they do it? And I ended up looking into it. And there was a guy, it was like a fake set of like drawers, and they had lead piping behind. They were just blowing air into it. So it was flicking out all the cards. I was like, that's such a cool thing. Yeah. And the fact that I was watching it thinking, how the hell did they do that? But like that, the whole opening sequence is amazing. I actually think I prefer the opening to the ending sometimes. Yeah. Like, all those like little, like no human with, stack books this way. I still love I still don't quite get the librarian thing. So I know we're kind of at the end of the film. I'm going back to the beginning. The ghost is supposed to be a librarian, yeah. Why is she making such a mess? It doesn't seem like a librarian thing to do. Like she's stacking the books like a psycho. She's, sending the paperwork everywhere. All I can think is, yes, she's a librarian, but she also turns into a weird skeleton monster. So I'm not sure if she has like a conflicting thing going on there where she's actually
a ghost that's possessed, is that what you're saying?
Well, that's one of the things with this film. I don't know what the moral, like, is there a moral issue with the whole ghost thing? No. Because are the ghosts all, like, is Slimer, did he used to be human? Is that the idea, or are they from other dimensions?
I'm assuming they were human at some point, but
But if he's human, Slimer's just knocking around, he's just trying to eat hot dogs, having a good time. Then all of a sudden they capture him in this little ass trap and then put him in a containment center in the building, like basically ghost prison. Like, I'm not sure how I feel. I know he was causing a bit of mischief, but as ghosts go, I was like, he seems okay, Slimer.
And apparently they were all right with that for years before, because they were saying, there's something wrong with the 12th floor, but we just got over it. But now all of a sudden the Ghostbusters are here. We might as well.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh, well, I think the idea is that all these things, there were like little things, it comes back to little mentions in the script. I think the idea is that things are escalating. It's like there's all, like, they were doing the investigations because there were these little signs that, ghosts might actually be real. But then all of a sudden, because of the way the building is built, which is, there's actually quite a bit about the way the building's built and these weird psychos and alternate dimensions and Sumerians and stuff, it's all just kind of thrown out the door pretty quickly. It's like all of a sudden it's kicking off, like, the ghosts are all coming back to life, but, ghosts are appearing, whatever the fuck it is. But, I don't know I don't quite get the rules with the ghosts, because some of them, like when the Titanic shows up, they're very much ghosts in the traditional sense. And the cabbie, he's a skeleton, but it's a human skeleton. Yeah, I get that. But then I don't know what a Slimer is. I don't know what a Slimer looks like.
I don't think you're meant to. But
I don't. And like you said, I don't think it matters.
Going back to the library scene, once again, like watching this film, I seem to notice the secondary characters a lot more, because the living librarian, the one that gets scared at the beginning, I've already mentioned. Like, you've had Al Powell, you've had Warren from. We won't mention Beverly Hills Cop 3 again. But the living librarian is Mrs. Finkel from Ace Ventura.
Oh yeah, she is. Yeah. And she has some cool lines. Yeah.
I seem to notice these random secondary characters, like Ron Jeremy as well, just
Yeah, well, you do just pick up different things. That's
Yeah.
part of the joy of doing this podcast. It's like you're just watching it in a slightly different way. It's like the whole thing when it's like, oh, do you or any of your family have a history of kind of, I don't know, mental issues? Like, oh, my uncle thought he was St. Jerome. And it's like St. Jerome's like the patron saint of librarians. It's like, I'd say that's a pretty big yes. Again, I think we mentioned this in nearly every podcast. The best movies, all the characters have their moments. They all make it stick. There's you remember the librarian, you remember all these minor characters. Well, I just, except for Powell, I totally forgot about that. It's such a crime. But somebody's seen Die Hard and Ghostbusters a million times. I just didn't put them together. But it is very much as good as Janine is, and the big, when you think of the Ghostbusters, you obviously think of the four of them. But realistically, what it is in this film, the four of them really are Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Harold Ramis, and the fourth is actually Sigourney Weaver. Yeah, it's not, and I don't mean that as disrespect to Winston, to Ernie Hudson. It's just he's not in this film. They've obviously largely written him out because he's not Eddie Murphy, and he's fine in his role, but it's a minor role. The fourth major player in this film is without question Dana White. It's definitely Sigourney Weaver.
Well, she's the one that gets the ball rolling.
Yeah, and dude, that whole scene, I mentioned earlier about the fact that this film has legit scary bits. The bit where obviously, the eggs start cooking, she opens the door and the zoom, that's all pretty weird. But the bit when she's in the chair,
armchair,
and that just to be clear, those hands are very handsy. There's one that comes up around the leg. The second hand goes right for the titty, straight for tit, and it is on there. And at one point, I'm like, does it actually pull out her boob? It's very close. And I watched it twice with my wife. I was like, wait, no. I was like, was that Sigourney Weaver's boob? And I couldn't quite tell. It's like the hand is on the boob and it pulls down the top of it just as before the chair goes through into the kitchen. And I was like, man, I think maybe there was a hint of boob. But yeah, that one demon hand is, as I say, very, very handsy. And
it was the other one that came up between the legs then and just grabbed down as well. And you think it's straight down the middle, but it kind of veers off to the left a bit.
Yeah, well, that demon obviously had the decency to be like, whoa, I can't just go straight up there. But the other hand, he has no qualms about getting some boob action. So dirty bugger.
When she then became the gatekeeper, I was watching this with my wife, and my wife just turned around and went, wow, Sigourney's got a good figure. Wow, you're only figuring this out right now.
It's weird with Sigourney Weaver because I remember reading, and this was in fairness, 10, 15 years ago, but it was about the different ways women are perceived by men and women. And it was basically a list of they used to be very popular in the late 90s, 2000s, stuff like that, where it was the 100 sexiest women and the 100 sexiest men. FHM was famous for doing it. And there was a list of what men perceived as being the 100 sexiest women, and then a list of what the women perceived as the 100 most beautiful women. And number one at the time was actually Sigourney Weaver. And it's strange, and I think it's because she played, Ripley and stuff. I never thought of her as a sexy character, but you see her in this film, and she is played off as being obviously an object of desire. So she's very strong, character in herself. But all the guys, Peter Lewis, the other guy, the musician fellow, everybody wants to get, and it's you watch it, and yes, she's very 80s with the blusher and the hair and stuff. But Sigourney Weaver's she's a beautiful woman. There's no two ways about it.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But saying that, I've never thought of her as being sexy, bizarrely, because I just think of her as Dana. I think of her as Ripley. I just can't see it like that. I think it's the Ripley thing. You can't think of Ripley as being sexy. You think of her as being badass, but it's just. And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I'm like, oh, well, she's a strong woman, so I can't find her attractive. It's just, I don't know, it's odd. She's just Ripley. I can't think of her that way. It's bizarre. But then, like I said, a lot of people do.
Yeah, no, I don't even know what I was going to say there. No, but in this film, she's a strong woman. She's an attractive woman. She is the right pick for this film.
Yeah, and like you said, she's strong, but she's not overly. It's not
strong. It doesn't feel forced. Not strong as in I'm going to kick it. She's just a strong, independent woman, as you snap your fingers. You know what I mean?
She is a strong, independent woman, but then it's not overdone. She goes to see the Ghostbusters because she's like, listen, I think there's a dog in my fridge. It's it doesn't feel I feel like nowadays maybe you try too hard to be like, oh, we got to make it like Ripley. Like, she does need to be, clicks finger, a strong, independent woman. And instead, no, she's just a believable, competent young woman. And it's like, yeah, that's absolutely fine. And the fact that she spends most of the film just batting away Peter Venkman until eventually his child. And like I said, she gives into Peter Venkman's, Bill Murray's child like everyone else. He shows up, and what does she think? This guy's a fucking tool. That is without question what Dana thinks of Peter when he first shows up. But he's just relentless, and eventually, like, God, he's so charming. He's so charming, and she falls for him just like everyone else does. Except for my wife, who thinks he's horrendous. But yeah, whatever.
Should we? I think we've covered a lot of the film. We've backed and forthed all over this.
Oh film. Yeah. Otherwise, we'll never get to the end of this.
Yeah. Should we move on to the next section?
Yeah, facts. We've obviously done a few, but go for it, man.
You want me to go first, you?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, feel free to jump on any of the facts you think I've missed. I do have a few. I do got a few.
I got a few. Yeah, go for it.
So we've already mentioned the Lewis Tully. A lot happened in that party. Mm-hmm. That is one continuous shot and almost entirely improvised.
Oh, again, it's the Saturday Night Live thing. Totally.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic.
Awesome.
Almost none of the scenes were filmed as scripted. Most had at least one ad-lib. Most of Bill Murray's lines were ad-libbed.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious for that one.
Shit, sorry.
Again, we've already covered this. The character of Winston was meant to have joined the team much earlier and would have been slimed at the hotel when Eddie Murphy declined the role. The script was rewritten to have Winston appear about halfway through the film.
Well, this is a different... let's be clear. I love Eddie Murphy, but this is a completely different film with Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
And the other thing with that is, I can't imagine Eddie Murphy just playing a totally straight character. Like, he's going to be competing with Bill Murray for laughs. There's just no two ways about it. Like, he's like, this is 1984. This is peak. People forget just how famous. I mean, he was famous enough to turn down Ghostbusters in '84.
Yeah.
That's how famous Eddie Murphy was. And I think and I'm not saying necessarily about it because I love Eddie Murphy, especially, Eddie Murphy around early 80s. This is when we all loved Eddie Murphy. This is, like we said, Beverly Hills Cop. This is Delirious. This is Eddie Murphy World, the 48 Hours. But because they would be so big on screen, such big characters, it would fundamentally change the movie in such a big way to have Bill Murray and Eddie Murphy playing off each other. But, interesting all the same.
So I've covered this one as well. On the set... Oh, no, I actually haven't covered this part. On the set, Dan Aykroyd referred to the Slimer ghost as the ghost of John Belushi. Slimer's gluttonous eating was based on Belushi's cafeteria scene in National Lampoon's Animal House.
Nice.
We've already said that this was written for John Belushi in mind, but when he passed away, they offered it to Bill Murray. And what's quite interesting, again, I go back to that Netflix special about the 80s movies. They did say quite a lot that nobody actually knew if Bill Murray had accepted the role. Like, he said yes, but nobody actually heard from him. They contacted his agency at the time or whatever and said, okay, we're actually filming tomorrow.
And he's going to show up.
Yeah, they didn't even know. And they didn't know if he actually was still doing the film until he showed up on set that day.
I mean,
that's a typical Bill Murray thing to do once again.
I still can't decide whether Bill Murray is the coolest guy in the world or an absolute bellend. And as I said before, I think it's a bit of both. I think it depends on what day you meet him. I think you meet him in the right mood, he is the coolest guy in the world. You meet him on another day, like, this guy's a fucking asshole.
But it's like the stories where he walks up to somebody in a bar and nicks one of their chips or drinks from their drink and goes, nobody will believe you, and just walks away.
I mean, it could be an urban myth, but we're all willing to believe it. Exactly. I mean, speaking of urban myths, one of the ones I have is that supposedly, I mean, this was the biggest comedy of all time up until Home Alone was released. I mean, it was 30 million budget, went on to make 300 million. I think that was just domestically as well, maybe. But supposedly, and again, I'm not sure how much truth there is to this, Bill Murray didn't make any money off this, or at least not originally. Instead of a paycheck, he asked for his passion project to be financed instead, which was Razor's Edge. Which they allowed him to star and direct after this.
Which was a total 6 film, wasn't he? He wanted to remake it.
Yeah. And it was a critical and commercial bomb. But supposedly, I mean, he's come out and said since, it's like, oh, no, this film's paid for all my kids to go to college. So I think he's made money from it subsequently, but I don't think maybe he's made as much money as he really, considering he's the star. Even, they all get a certain level of billing. He's the star of this film. Like, when you think of Ghostbusters, the first person you think of is Bill Murray, and I suspect he probably didn't make as much money as he should have.
He took a substantial break from acting after this film, and he was actually going to retire until he got cast in Scrooged.
Yeah. Well, thank God he came back, because Scrooge is another belter. That's another one. I mean, we'll have to wait a few months for that one, obviously, but Scrooge is on.
That's pretty much, that's 4 years, mine, to take a break from acting. So Sigourney Weaver recalled, I once had a fire in my apartment, and the firemen came to put it out. One of them opened my refrigerator and said, "Whoa, you better call the Ghostbusters."
Nice.
What else have I got here?
Well, funny enough, when she opens the fridge and the famous Zool, the Zool is actually voiced by the director, Ivan Reitman.
Is it?
Yeah, which is just a random fact kind of thing. But
I got a bit of a long one. According to Ernie Hudson, an earlier version of the script with Winston, the larger role with an elaborate backstory as an Air Force demolitions expert, excited by the part, he agreed to the job for half his usual salary. The night before shooting began, he was given a new script with a greatly reduced role. Ivan Reitman told him the studio had wanted to expand Murphy's role. In a 2015 article for Entertainment Weekly, Hudson wrote, "I love the character and he's got some great lines, but I felt the guy was just kind of there. I love the movie, I love the guys, but I'm very thankful to Ivan for casting me. I'm very thankful the fans appreciate the Winston character, but it's always been very frustrating, kind of a love-hate thing. I guess what Hudson is glossing over is that he was a last-minute stand-in Freddie Murphy, who backed out after getting the lead role in Beverly Hills Cop. Understandably, they shrunk the role after superstar Murphy dropped out." That's got to be.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's one of those weird things. Of course, if you're in his position, you're going to feel that way. But let's be clear, and this is no disrespect to Ernie Hudson. He's not Eddie Murphy. Like, if you've got Eddie Murphy in this film, you've got to give him a substantial role, because in 1984, he's one of the most famous people on the planet. Yep. Ernie Hudson wasn't. He's been brought in, and yeah, you're going to lean on your bigger stars. All right, there's going to be more for Peter to do. There's going to be more for Sigourney Weaver to do. That totally makes sense. But then equally on the other side, I get the fact that he's like, maybe the part should have been a bit bigger. I think he got a bit, bigger part in number 2 at least. One of the most bizarre things we always quote when I go back home is the scene down in the train station when they're all doing the echo thing, like hello, 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 and then Winston goes, "Hello, Winston." I'm like, I don't know why that bit always stands out. I thought it was so cool. And then he gets hit by the ghost train. Yeah. Did you catch a number? No, I missed it. It's like he's still not the star of that film, but he's on the poster, and he does get a bigger role.
He does have a better one.
It's just a shame that it's not very good.
Yeah. Anyway. So we've already mentioned Gozer. Gozer was originally going to be played by Paul Rubens, who, if anyone don't know who Paul Rubens is, Pee Wee Herman.
That would be, mind you, if Paul Rubens had played Gozer and you had said, "Oh, do you know Gozer was originally going to be played by a German supermodel?" I'd be like, that's fucking weird. So yeah, either one's pretty odd.
The reason why he turned down the role, by the way, but the reason why is because in the original script, Gozer took on the form of Ivo Shander, who was the architect of the building and started the Gozer cult. And he would have resembled a pale, slender, unremarkable man in a business suit. Obviously, Gozer's final appearance was David Bowie meets Grace Jones.
Yeah, I actually think that makes more sense, because that does like lean into the narrative a bit more. And I guess they do pass it off. It's like, I thought Gozer was a guy. It's like, well, Gozer can be whatever he wants to be. And supposedly Gozer's been watching, I'm not sure if MTV was even a thing in 1984, but obviously he was keeping an eye on, European fashion and went for that instead. But I think it probably would have been a bit better maybe if it had been, like you say, that low-key guy based on the guy who built, the Gozer cult, the guy who built the building and all that jazz. But whatever, man, it doesn't really matter. It was all about the visuals. All about the visuals. And the only thing that matters is Stay Puft Marshmallow Man 2 case.
So just a few more from me. Michael Keaton turned down both the roles of Dr. Venkman and Egon Spengler. After this film, William Atherton became reviled. People would try to fight him in bars. One day, shortly after the film's release, Atherton was walking down a stretch of 7th Avenue in New York City, entirely crowded with school buses, when he heard lots of children shouting at the top of their lungs, "Hey, Dickless!"
Yeah, well, that is the thing. When you think of him, you think of that line. It's true. This man has no dick. That's what you think of. Pecker. Oh my God, what an asshole.
Sigourney the kid would come up and ask her if she really turned into a dog.
Obviously. Why wouldn't she?
And what else have I got? In rehearsal, Bill Murray teased model Slavica Jovan, who played Gozer, about her pronunciation of the line "choose and perish." It sounded like Jews and berries to him, and he'd say, "There are no Jews and berries here."
Of course.
So, again, that just goes back to the fact that he's a bit of a jerk.
No, he sure is.
And we've already covered The Razor's Edge, and we've already covered John Candy. So I'm pretty much done with facts on that one, mate.
Just a few from me. So the advert that you see early on in the film, and it's in Ding is actually watching it on TV. We're here to believe you and all that jazz. In the lead up to the film, they actually played that advert on TV.
Yes.
They changed the number to an actual 1-800 number. Like in the film, it's like 555 or something, but they changed to a 1-800 number that people could phone in. And when you phoned the number, it was actually voiced by Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, with them saying, "Oh, sorry, we can't come to the phone right now. We're out busy catching ghosts." And it supposedly got thousands and thousands of calls every hour, for months on end. So it was like this great, like, outside, beyond obviously the use of the great symbol and stuff and everything. It's like a great advertising campaign, especially for the 80s when I guess it was pretty innovative. It was released the same day as Gremlins. So like, what a fucking day for cinema. Ghostbusters and Gremlins on the same day is unbelievable. And the last one I've got is, I never noticed this before, or the fact that I may have just wiped it from my memory. Aykroyd plays Ray Stantz again, but in Casper the Friendly Ghost.
Who are you going to call?
He shows up.
Not
me, and he runs off. And supposedly people were furious with him at the time because, of course, he's playing Ray Stantz and he plays him out to be an absolute coward. And the other thing is, when the rules of the Ghostbusters, you don't go alone. And what does he do? He goes alone. So it completely out of the character. It felt like a money grab, which obviously it was, and it just didn't suit at all. And plus Casper. I mean, he was a big hit, but I'm not a big fan of Casper. But that's pretty much it for me. So Legacy next.
Yeah, well, we've already covered a lot of Legacy with the sequel and the remake. And
it's a messy legacy because I mean, as we mentioned, the sequel I think was after this came out, it became more popular with kids than they ever envisioned. I don't think they ever thought it was going to be this. I don't think they thought it was going to be this big, and they certainly didn't think it was going to be this popular with kids because, again, it wasn't made for kids. But between that and then the success of the cartoon, Ghostbusters 2 is a much more comedic film. It's a much more light-hearted film, despite the fact that Vigo's pretty mental. But it's a 3-star movie, the second one. It's not terrible. It's just okay.
Well, we'll obviously cover that at some point down the line in this podcast anyway.
Yeah, well, it's got a good 90s soundtrack. That's what, even though it's 89, that kind of borderline soundtrack. And I do love the bit with, it's a little on the nose and obviously trying to outdo the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man thing. But I do love with the music and everything with the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
What's the song again?
Your love is lifting me high.
Oh yeah, I fucking love that. I always love that track. The remake, we've already mentioned it. Tonally, they got it all wrong.
Yeah.
The cast isn't the problem. It's the director. It's the tone. It's not a Ghostbusters film. In fairness, if you were trying to do something completely different, so be it. But it's not a Ghostbusters film.
The effects as well just feel so cartoonish and just awful.
Oh yeah, the bad guy is the worst
on a lot of it. But it did give
us... Except for one, it did give us that, what's her name? The blonde's...
Yeah, the Egon person. Kate McKinnon, who is...
She's great.
Fantastic in that. Well, she's just fantastic. Anyway, Kate McKinnon is a comedic gem.
Yeah, but she's especially great in this. And as I said, the main four, I don't actually mind the four of them. She stands out as being, without question, the kind of the all-star of the team. But it's the tone of the film, it's the vibe, everything. It's not a great film. Obviously, the legitimate, I guess, what we consider to be Ghostbusters 3 is coming out, Ghostbusters Afterlife. I don't want to get my hopes too high, but I thought the trailer was great. I thought the tone looked correct. There were jokes in it, but they were playing it. They were playing it straight faced, and that's the important thing.
It also kind of feels that it's not actually a third film, but the official sequel of this first one, because if you read up about the synopsis of it, it says that people have largely forgot about what happened in New York in 1984. Mm-hmm. So they don't even mention 89.
Well, even in Ghostbusters 2, it's almost like they've all forgotten about the Ghostbusters in 89, like the whole thing when they show up to a party and they all start shouting He-Man. It's like, dude, how the fuck, they saved the city, but nobody gives, it's only been like, what was it, 7 years at the time?
It'd be interesting to see, like, because it's like small town America. Mm-hmm. They're Egon's grandkids from the gist of what I can gather. Mm-hmm. And the main star of it.
What I suspect is going to be the case with this one is that in the years after, once they saved the city, is that the ghost disappeared, and then a lot of people probably played up on the idea that it was all a hoax, that they created it, and it wasn't really, there was no real. But I don't know how you explain the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, but maybe it all. If they don't have a book written by Walter Peck that says everyone was just
drugged up and they were just like
Group
like you said in the film. But the main the main teenager played in this film is from Stranger Things, the TV show.
Oh, that awesome name, hasn't he?
He has the best name in the world ever, Finn Wolfhard.
Oh, what a great name.
Oh, it's fantastic.
I'm not sure if his face is quite pulling it off, but it's a great name. Great name. But yeah, like I said, like I think like I said, I like the trailer. I like the use of music. They use the fantastic, rather than the soundtrack, they use the brilliant score, and we'll get to that in a minute. But like I said, the most important thing was the tone of that trailer, was the fact that Paul Rudd, you're going to get like a certain level of comedic performance out of someone like Paul Rudd, but he's playing it seriously. He's not playing every line for chuckles, and the same with the kids and stuff. So yeah, I'm going to go in quietly optimistic for the sequel, but but as I said, the legacy, the cartoon was pretty good. Obviously we'll get to video games in a minute. So, Ghostbusters has never really gone away. It's always been a big part of popular culture. And a big part of that is, again, to go back to the iconography of the film. You don't need to see the characters from the film. You don't even need to hear the music. You just show anyone the symbol alone, and they know there's like the Ghostbusters. Although the one thing I'll say about the symbol is that when you watch the film, obviously at the start they're outside the library. It's not Ghostbusters one word. It's Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
it's bizarre, like in the film. But then ever since then, it's always been Ghostbusters as one word. But the title of the film, when you go back and watch it, is Ghostbusters.
He has a name as well, doesn't he? The symbol, the ghost in it. I think they named him Moogly.
Moogly? I've never heard that.
No,
completely pointless. But
the ghost in the logo is named Moogly by the production staff.
Why not? Yeah. Why not? Why not Moogly?
So, part of legacy, and let's move on to video games, and we're going to have to...
Which is part of the legacy, of course, and actually quite an important part of the legacy, because the big video game was the 2009 Terminal Reality game published by... It still sounds bizarre to have a game published by Atari.
Yeah.
But that was actually written in conjunction with Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis.
Yeah, it was classed as the official sequel of the...
Yeah. Bill Murray's does they have all the principal cast members returning back to do voice work, and even Max von Sydow does Vigo the Carpathian in the video game. It's just a shame that it's not a great video game. It's okay, but when you consider what they were doing, it's like, this is like the official Ghostbusters 3, and it's got all the original cast doing the voice, and then you play the game, and like, it's a bit shit, isn't it? It's a 6-7 out of 10. It's just a shame.
Yeah, it's not. It's not the best. I mean, the story of that, the plot of that, like bringing Gozer back. You said Vigo. They kind of brought it all back to the film. It's the story does well. Just the playability of that game is a bit.
Yeah, it was a run of the mill third person shooter in 2009, and there was actually a remaster of the game released, I think, 2 years ago. But the problem was, it was up to like 1080p and all this other things. But it was still fundamentally the same boring-ass third-person shooter that it was back then. So, it's not great. And the thing is, there have been tons of Ghostbuster video games, which nobody would be surprised to hear, but there's only been a handful of really good ones. Like, the original game, released in 1984, it was originally on the Atari 2600 and then later on the NES and the Master System. Consider it was 84, that was a surprisingly good game. Then there was, the real Ghostbusters, which is based on the cartoon. That was an arcade game from 1987, released by Data East. Data East, I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but they do a lot of famous arcade games from the late 80s, early 90s.
It's Japanese company, wasn't it, Data East?
Yeah. Was it Data East? I think so. They did like Bad Dudes and shit
Data
like
East,
that anyway.
Data East are the ones that did real Ghostbusters,
Yeah. And... that was pretty good. They had like ports to like the Commodore 64 and stuff, but those obviously weren't as good. But the arcade game was pretty sweet. But the one that always stands out for me was the it was just called Ghostbusters again, but it was released in 1990. And it almost had like a chibi art style. So they had like little squat bodies, but big cartoon heads. But it was very clear you could see, that's Peter, that's Egon kind of thing. And that was the one I actually had the most fun with. And when I say that there have been a lot of Ghostbusters games, there were a lot of Ghostbusters games, but other than the one in 2009, there's not actually been that many. Considering you would think it's like a perfect fit for video games. And like I said, there have been some decent ones, but there arguably hasn't been a great one. That's the
one we missed from Legacy was like the Extreme Ghostbusters, the other TV show where Egon was a bit older and it was his nephew. And there was loads of games about that. There was quite a few games about the Extreme Ghostbusters.
Yeah, there's a lot of like probably DS and Wii stuff which we're not really interested in. But I mean, who would you have make one now if you were going to have like who would be your perfect team to make a Ghostbusters game?
I don't know. Like I'm officially going to turn around and say I honestly don't know for this one what I would want to see.
Yeah, in terms of playability, obviously it doesn't quite suit the story. But if we go in terms of pure playability, bizarrely, the first thing that popped into my head was Splatoon, and it seems bizarre, the idea of Nintendo, of course, making a Ghostbusters game. Yeah. But I can almost imagine, like, if you took the Splatoon engine, but just kind of kind of tweaked it to create like a kind of cartoon arcade Ghostbusters style video. I'm like, yeah, I'd be totally on board with that.
You said Splatoon. I've actually just had something that popped into my mind that might work, but you're gonna have to help me out here. There was a video game. Loads of them released in the early 90s, and then it was a remake. And I can't remember much about it other than the fact that the main guy wore a hockey mask with no shirt on.
Splatterhouse.
The remake of Splatterhouse. Mm-hmm. Like if you got all the
that is a deep. Do you mean the Xbox 360 remake of Splatterhouse, which nobody played?
3 remake.
Yeah. Nobody fucking played that. That is a deep cut, dude.
I completed that.
Oh my god! Just be clear, that game was shite.
That game was, but that game style. Take away the fact that I can never remember the main guy's name in Splatterhouse. I want to say Jason, but
hockey face.
Just because he's wearing a hockey mask. But take away the fact that he is just with his possessed arm beating crap out of loads of minions. That game style of the remake and the 3D animation of that kind of feels like if you just pop a Ghostbuster in that kind of setting, that might work. Like haunted house setting. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't have to stretch all over New York. Just have it in a single location.
I guess like my big thing with the game is like, do you go like they did in 2009? But obviously you want a better one. Is a more traditional over the shoulder like third person. I think third person shooter is the start to go. But I like the idea of making a game where the ghosts are actually much harder to catch. So it's almost like a boss rush kind of thing. Yeah. So rather than just going around and like fighting bitch ass ghosts, it's like, you know, you're going from like one area to another around town, and you're essentially getting into one boss battle after, kind of like Monster Hunter. So like that kind of style where you go out, you prepare and stuff like that, but then you've got to drive around the city, like, and go to certain locations. But the big thing is once you get there, is like everything is building up to a boss battle, but it's just the boss battle, and it's just, you know, you just don't go and you zap it and trap it. It's like you've really got to think about it, you know. So I'm not sure if like the Monster Hunter kind of system would work, but I feel like something along those lines, something like a little bit more kind of obtuse rather than your just traditional third-person shooter. I think that'd be quite interesting.
That'd be quite good, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I can't believe it's taken us this long to get to the soundtrack, but fuck me. I mean, just be clear, there are two very separate things here. The soundtrack is mental and super 80s. Obviously, everybody thinks of the Ghostbusters theme from Ray Parker Jr., and I'm not sure if you've watched the music video recently, but holy shit. It is, I mean, there is a lot of stuff in this film which feels very 80s. Nothing matches the neon glow of that music video with so many weird 80s pointless cameos. Yeah. Chevy Chase is in it, John Candy, Columbo's in it for some reason, Danny DeVito, and then a bunch of 80s celebrities who I cannot fucking remember. You know, like when you see faces and when they pop up, you're like, I think I'm supposed to know who that is, but I have no idea. But that video is something else, man. And he is, again, you talk about sexual innuendo. I mean, busting makes him feel good. Well, like busting a nut. I mean, is that what we're going for here? Jesus Christ, Ray Parker Jr., you filthy son of a bitch. But everyone thinks of that song. But like I said, I Believe It's Magic by Mick Smiley. I love that track. Saving the Day. The soundtrack to the end of Saving the Day. Saving the
By the Alessi brothers, wasn't it?
The Alessi brothers. That is, God, I went high on that. I really leaned into that one. But yeah, the soundtrack is great, but the score is really what ties this film together. Yeah. The score by Elmer Bernstein, I mean, he's done all sorts. He did like The Magnificent Seven and To Kill a Mockingbird, but then he did more contemporary with The Bunny Ears. We're talking contemporary in the 80s, stuff like Stripes and Animal House. So he's done this like really eclectic career in terms of the score he's completed. But that is what works for this film. Like from that opening sequence, and you hear the pianos and everything. It just, it's like, yeah, this is spooky. It's also fun. It just captures the tone perfectly.
Absolutely, all of that. There's not much more I could build to say on top of what you've just said in regards to that. All I can say is absolutely, it does. It captures
absolutely.
It captures the film perfectly. It gets you in the mood for it. It's a great score.
Well, I think it's one of those scores, like I said, everyone thinks of the soundtrack, of course, but I think you could play 5 seconds of pretty much any part of this score just out of the blue, and people would be like, "Was that Ghostbusters?" Like, it's just become so synonymous in a kind of quite a sneaky way. I don't think many scores necessarily, unless it's like your big bombastic scores like Indiana Jones and Star Wars, where the score essentially becomes the main theme. Obviously, with this, the soundtrack became the main theme. But I think those little musical moments, I think you could just pick it out of any part of the film. People are like, that's Ghostbusters for sure.
Yeah, you're right. If you say name the Ghostbusters theme, a lot of people are going to say who you're going to call.
Oh, 100%.
But, I mean, then you'll get the people that just go... Da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah. Or even just like I said, just these even I'm not sure if it'd be Peter Venkman's theme like this, just like some of them are more comedic, but like I said, like the opening to the film, before you get the Ghostbusters, when you get the weird spookier music before that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I really do think the score plays a major part in this film, and I think it gets overshadowed by the soundtrack for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think the score for this film is as important as any of the characters, to be honest. But one thing I did notice, actually going back and watching the music video, was that they took a scene from the music video and it became the intro to the real Ghostbusters. There's a bit when they're walking through Times Square, and it's Ray Parker Jr. with them all doing the finger clicks walking behind him. They literally used that for the opening sequence in the real Ghostbusters.
If I remember rightly, the opening sequence of the real Ghostbusters cartoon, then Slimer comes in and leaves a trail that they...
Yeah, and they fall over and shit. Yeah, it's weird, actually, because the characters, they kind of look like him, but also don't. It's like they don't quite have the likeness. I don't know if it was like a licensing issue. But anyway, absolutely bizarre.
Egon is a mix of Egon and Kate McKinnon.
Yeah, he totally is. Yeah, he totally is.
Yeah,
it's really weird.
Like Ray, I don't know what they... Like, the template they used for Ray was...
It's an odd one. He's just a weird, chubby ginger guy. It's a weird template. It's Winston as well. Didn't get a great deal because he just feels like black template guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I said, the weirdest one I think is Peter, because he's so iconic, and they didn't even do the hair. It's just a guy with brown hair. Yeah. But for some odd reason, it fucking worked.
It was a great cartoon. Really, absolutely great.
Yeah, it was a great cartoon. But yeah, I think we're going to have to wrap it up here eventually. Otherwise, we'll rattle on all day. But at this point, usually we say, I think we know where this is going. What would you give this? 5 stars? Out of 5 stars. So I don't want to lead you. And would you encourage others to watch it? If for some bizarre reason you knew anyone who hadn't seen the Ghostbusters, would you encourage them to watch it in 2021?
Well, this 5-star film is definitely 5 stars.
Yeah, this 5-star film is. I'm going to agree with you. This 5-star film is a 5-star film. Yeah, 100%.
It's great. It picks up on every beat. It seems to work. Like even the ridiculousness of the story just feels right. All of it is just the tone of it, the setting, the characters. It's all done right. I mean, the only thing, like you said, I mean, from hindsight, is doing a bit of doing Winston dirty, but other than that, it's still a great film, and it's still done very well.
Oh no, it's an absolutely, I totally agree. It's an absolutely fantastic film. And the great thing about it is, despite the fact that there have been sequels, reboots and stuff, is like the original still feels so unique. Yeah. Because again, I don't think tonally there's much like it. Like I said, this is a film where you can watch it as a kid because it's got all these visual, like all this great iconography. It's like, why wouldn't you like it with the car, the proton packs and everything? But because it really is a film for adults first and foremost, it feels totally unique. I'm not sure if this film gets made in this way in 2021. And I hope I'm wrong. And as I said, Ghostbusters Afterlife kind of lives up to the legacy of the first film.
Yeah.
But because of the way the franchise went, immediately after this was released with the cartoon, with the sequels, et cetera, it still feels like a totally unique beast. And the performances, the weird section at the end, all the smoking man, and I can't remember, like I used to smoke quite a bit, and I haven't smoked. You know, I still have like the occasional cheeky cigarette when I drink, but I haven't smoked a cigarette in over a year now. And for the most part, I don't even think about it until I watch this film. I was like, my God. It was something about the way when Ray sees Slimer and the cigarette is hanging up his lip. I don't know what it was about that, but I'm just like, I want a fucking cigarette. And even my wife said, it's like, everything about this film is you. It's like, if you bought that fire station, it's like, she looked at it, it's got an arcade machine, they're eating noodles, there's a completely superfluous fire pole, and they've got a buzzer, and everyone's smoking. It's like, Jesus Christ, it's like they made it for you. It's like, yeah, I know, I love it. I love everything about this film. It speaks to me on every level. But yeah, I agree with you. It's a 5-star film, and of course, would we encourage other people to go? If some lunatic out there hadn't seen Ghostbusters, of course we would.
I mean, what's wrong with you? Take a look at yourself.
Oh yeah, have a long, hard look in the mirror, sunshine.
And then B, go and watch this film.
Yeah. Give yourself a talking to first, then go and watch it, and then give yourself another talking to, because you know at that point you're like, what the hell was I thinking? Why haven't I seen this film before?
If you haven't seen this film before, watch this film, and then just watch this film. I mean,
call it a day.
Yeah, Ghostbusters 2 is great. No, it's not. Ghostbusters is all right, but no,
it's got some good stuff.
Leave it at this. Watch this film, and maybe Afterlife.
That's maybe, I guess, a more interesting question. It's like, all right, we are unequivocally saying, obviously, go and watch Ghostbusters. So if you've never seen Ghostbusters before, go and watch it. Would you encourage people to watch Ghostbusters 2? And I'm like, I don't. I'm like, no, because I don't think it's terrible. I'm like, yeah, go on. It's fun. It's not like I said, it's a 3-star movie compared to the 5-star first film. It's not anywhere near as good as the first one. Not that many films are. I think the original Ghostbusters is that good. But Ghostbusters 2 is okay.
It's not terrible. And I enjoy watching it. I would never watch Ghostbusters 2 like on its own. I'd probably watch Ghostbusters and think, you know what, I'll probably watch the sequel at some point. But I would never, but the whole point of this podcast is, even though you enjoy it, would you recommend it to others? For Ghostbusters 2, I wouldn't. And we're kind of,
I don't know. I think
we're kind of jumping on it now, because at some point we are going to cover Ghostbusters 2.
Yeah, all I'll say is I would leave it. I wouldn't say people don't watch it. If someone's like, if I'm like, oh, watch Ghostbusters, and like, okay, I'll watch Ghostbusters. Like, oh, should I watch the sequel as well? I was like, it's up to you. I was like, I would just give them that one. I was like, listen, the second one's fun, but if you finish the first one, just don't go in expecting. It's like, you know, you come off Godfather Part 2. If someone asks me, it's like, oh, should I watch Godfather Part 2? I'm like, well, you might as well complete the set, but just heads up, it's not a fucking lick on go. Like, you know, Godfather Part 3 in and of itself is an okay film. It's just nowhere near as good as the first two. And that's the same with this film. It's fine. It's got some fun bits. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. But it's a bright and breezy, 90, 145 minutes, whatever the hell it is. 145 minutes. That was a bit of a jump. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you've added that's like the director's cut on the director's.
The director's cut. Have you seen the 3-hour director's cut of Ghostbusters 2? Yeah, me either. It sounds like a fucking terrible idea. That's it then, isn't it? That's it. It's just down to you to what are we doing next week? What film? What film, dude?
What film are we covering next week? Well, we've mentioned him a couple of times in this podcast, so we are going to enter the realm of Eddie Murphy, but we are not going what you would probably assume we would cover if we were going to cover our first Eddie Murphy film on this podcast. Because as much as you're
waterboarding everyone with this now.
As much as I love Beverly Hills Cop, I remember liking randomly 48 Hours a bit more.
See, it's going to be an interesting one because I love.
But I haven't watched it since the 90s.
Okay. See, I've seen 40 Hours once, and I was really young, and I can't remember any of it. And it's bizarre because, like you said, I love Eddie Murphy, and I watched all these other films, you know, from that period, like over and over again. Watched his stand-up over and over again. But for some odd reason, 40 Hours, I think I watched it when maybe I was too young, and it didn't click for me. So I am going in fresh on this one. And obviously, you know, I know a lot of people love this film, so I'm looking forward to it.
We cover a lot of the big films on this. It's always nice to just go to to like a random little one every now and then. So,
well, that's the weird one with this. I don't know how people feel about this film. Like, you call it a little film. I know, like, the people who love this film fucking love this film.
Yeah.
So, you know, am I going to find out, you know, is it with good reason, or am I going to go in and just be like disappointed? But yeah, it's one of the more, you know, like Ghostbusters. We're doing this. Like, yeah, we know we like this one. I'm going into 48 hours. I have no idea what my rating is going to be for this film at all. None at all. So yeah, it should be good, man. Good choice.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it.
Cool. Yeah. So, yeah, you would. Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to. No, I am. Like I said, I'm looking forward to it. It's something a bit different. It's a film I can't remember. So, yeah, I think this is a very, very different kind of, kind of look back at a film from my youth, which as I said, I have seen, but I don't have the same connection to it. So, yeah, interesting take. But yeah, that's it for this week. So if you get the chance, watch 48 Hours, because fuck, I'm going to have to. And join us, same kind of time periods next week. So yeah, as always, dude, absolute pleasure. Thanks. And catch you later, man. Bye.
Yeah, I'll see you soon. Cheers, mate.
Bye-bye. Oh yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s, or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1-star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't go smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.